Good afternoon, everyone. This is Caitlin from TechServe Alliance, and welcome to today's webinar. You just wrote the contract to order. Now what? There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, so feel free to write in any questions you want answered in the question box on the right side of your screen. We are also recording today's presentation, which will be available to TechServe members on the TechServe Alliance website and will be sent out in follow-up emails. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Barb Bruno.
Thanks so much, Caitlin, and I want to welcome all of you to this call. And I appreciate so many of you registering for this call, considering we're facing a holiday weekend. So I'm thrilled that you're all here. So let's get to our program. You just wrote the contract or order. Now what do? The most successful individuals in our profession follow a repeatable process on both the client development and recruiting side of our profession. So let's focus on the process you should follow once new business has been written. There's information that you need from the client. I want you to add one very important element when you're writing new business. Currently, we write skill-based contracts and orders. Our clients provide us with a list of needed skills and experience levels, and if our candidates don't have 100% of the skills listed, they're screened out. But if your candidate had everything your client was requiring, the job, hold on one second here, our PowerPoint slides are going in advance. Let me go back here. If, in fact, our candidates had 100% of the skills listed, they're screened out. But if your candidate has everything your client is requesting, the job would be a lateral move, not necessarily career advancement for your candidate. So I'm suggesting the missing element in most of the business we write is performance objectives. And this is going to be a big switch for all of you, because I want you to think right now of the contracts you've written and the full-time job orders you've written, and almost all of them are just a list of skills and a job description. But when we, again, how many times do we have a candidate screened out because they don't have one particular skill set, but you and I both know they can do the job? What does your candidate need to do to succeed at the job? That's what a performance objective is. And how will their success be measured? These are the questions we have to start asking our clients. Because if you want to book more candidates in this candidate-driven marketplace, performance objectives is the key to the change. This is a major change we all have to make, because when you recruit candidates who have similar performance objectives, you know they're qualified to succeed with your client. And so I think the question all of us start having to ask when we're writing business is not only what are the skills in the job description, but how are you going to judge my candidate? 6 months from now, what do they have to have done for you to deem them successful? What are the 4 to 6 performance objectives that my candidate's going to be judged on? In this candidate-driven market, revising the way that we write business is critical to your ability to surface the talent that they will hire, even though they may not match 100% of the skills listed. It's critical that everyone in the hiring process agrees on the performance objectives. And yes, this looks like an additional step I'm adding when you're writing the requisitions, but I'm telling you, you're going to place more candidates in jobs. We've switched over to getting performance objectives for about 18 months now, and it has made such a difference. And every company that I've taught how to do this, they're booking more send-outs. They're getting more people on interviews, and a result, they're placing more people on contracts and in jobs. Information that should be shared with the recruiting team. If you want your recruiting team to fill the business that you write, you must know your best business and not bring in business where they have no network or no knowledge. If you bring in a technical order and I'm a recruiter and I don't understand the business that you wrote, it really is pretty impossible for me to surface candidates that your clients are going to hire, because quite frankly, I don't understand the job. And that's why you need to do revenue modeling. Go back and look at the business that you write, that you fill. Because if I place .NET developers, and that's what I know, and that's what I've been doing for you, is I'm the .NET developer recruiter, and that's what I really know. And you bring in a job for a PM, and I have no clue what this project manager is going to do, and I have no network built up. By the time I learn what they do, more than likely that job's going to be filled by another recruiter who has the experience. And so you've got to share the following with your recruiting team. When one of your recruiters make the first presentation to the client. And I want to tell you why you need to do that. When you write business, if you have one of your recruiters make the first presentation to your client will always give them additional information they didn't give you when you wrote the business. Or they're going to listen to how your recruiter is going to go out in the marketplace, and they might realize your recruiter doesn't understand the job, or they're not selling the company well enough. And so this is another thing that can really improve the number of orders and contracts that you're filling. We've got to start making some tweaks in the way we're doing business because businesses change. And so performance objectives is the first change. The second change I'm suggesting is you need to have your recruiters make their first presentation to your client. So when you write business, you want to say, in 2 hours from now, I would love to have one of my recruiters present this job to you, because I want to make sure that they understand. I want to make sure I heard what you said, and I want to make sure that we're selling this opportunity proper in the marketplace. Now, if you're working on a VMS, situation, obviously you can't do this because it's all about getting candidates in fast, before anybody else, and you've only got, X amount of hours to present 3 candidates. So you can't do this. But when you have contact with the hiring authority, you absolutely, and they're going to love that because you're going to say, I want to make sure that my recruiter understands this opening. I'm going to give them everything, but I want to make sure they open it. I'd love you to hear how they're going to present this in the marketplace. You want to find out candidates or companies that the clients prefer you to target because often they've got somebody they'd love to hire. They've got a company they'd love to hire from, and if you can give that information to recruiters, they can surface talent faster. You've got to know what percentage of the time the contractor is going to do every area of responsibility. If you write a job or you write a contract and you tell me there's 5 areas of responsibility, as a recruiter, I'm going to assume that they're going to do each responsibility 20% of the time. And so I might give you candidates that are qualified, that they're doing, a similar job. The candidate goes on the interview and finds out that 90% of the job is one function, and the other 4 functions are the other 10%. That's a very different contract. That's a very different opportunity. And so if you could break it down into percentages, I can make better matches as a recruiter. You've got to ask what's been missing from candidates they've already interviewed because that helps your recruiters, fine tune their search. Get 4 to 6 performance objectives. What does the candidate need to do to succeed at the job? Because that's going to make sure that your contractors and your candidates work out. You're not going to have them falling off because they weren't qualified because you know how they're going to be judged. You want to know if there's anybody else being strongly considered. You want to know what problem exists as a result of this job being vacant and get a target date to fill the job. Get 3 interviewing times and get the names of an alternate person. Because how many times have you written business and then you're trying to get a hold of your client to book your candidates and they disappear off the face of the earth? And now, your recruiters are wondering why they're not being booked. Our job, whether you're in sales or in recruiting, and recruiting is sales, is to get people in front of new clients every day. If you want to improve the way you work your desk, just keep increasing the number of first interviews that you book. Well, in order to book an interview, if you get a target date to fill, now you know when to work it. If you've got 3 interviewing times and an alternate person, now you just call the alternate person and tell them who you're plugging in on the interviewing times. And very rarely do they even ask you qualifying questions. So this will help you book more send-outs, get more candidates in front of your hiring authorities. Now, there's some actions that need to be taken prior to recruiting. And there's several things. First, your clients and candidates should receive a list from you of written expectations because this helps both the clients and the candidates understand the return on their investment of time and money to work with you versus your competition. If people are trying to buy from you only by price, they're looking for the cheapest, resource out there. You don't necessarily want to be Walmart. Maybe you don't want to be, Nordstrom's, but you don't necessarily want to be Walmart either. And the way you justify the margins that you're charging or the fees that you're charging is when your clients and candidates understand everything you're doing for them. Clients think that they give us business and we go to our database and we just surface all these qualified candidates and we present it to them. And I honestly think that that's sometimes what they think we do. And you and I both know it's a candidate-driven marketplace. It's harder than ever to find talent. So this is when you should be making the highest margins and the most money because it's a candidate-driven marketplace. But what you need to do is tell clients what they can expect from you and what you need from them in order to attract the talent they're going to hire without exception and without hesitation. When they see everything that you do, you're justifying what you're charging. They don't understand all the work that we put into this. And they go, you make one phone call, but what work went into you knowing who to call and how to call? You have to have written expectations. On the candidate side, they think we're all alike. Candidates and clients both call us you people because when they ask us how we're different, we all say the same things. If you provide expectations up front, This is a differentiator from the first minute they talk to you. Because when a candidate sends you their credentials, you should respond to them with the list of expectations so they know what to expect from you and what you need from them to present jobs and contracts that they're going to accept without hesitation. And again, someone on the recruiting team should make that first recruiting presentation to your client to guarantee that you heard what your client said. The performance objectives, and this is going to change the way that you're working your desk. Benefits to doing these things: you're going to improve recruiting presentations. It guarantees that your recruiters understand the opportunities they're working on. Because trust me, if you write business and I don't understand it, I'm not going to work it. I might take it from you, but I've been a recruiter and I've been an account exec. I've worked both jobs. And as an owner, I know that if my salespeople bring in jobs that my recruiters don't understand, they just won't work it. Often your clients are going to share additional selling points that are going to assist your recruiting efforts. And your recruiters can ask clients directly for clarification of information when they're presenting a job if they don't understand something. And recruiters understand what their candidates need to do to succeed. See, for so many years, all we've been doing is getting a list of skills and getting a job description, and then we wonder why our candidates sometimes don't work out. It's interesting because clients still give us a list of skills, they still give us a job description, but when we ask them for performance objectives, sometimes we realize that how they're going to judge our candidate is not reflected at all by the list of skills they want and by the job description they gave us, because they're judging the candidate on something totally different. So when you ask for performance objectives, you can tell the clients, I want to save you some time. And what we're realizing is what we need to know is, how are you going to judge my contractor? 90 days from now, what does my contractor have to have done for you to deem them successful? After 6 months, how are you going to judge them? Because all of a sudden you have a much different conversation with your clients and your candidates, because you can tell your candidates how they're going to be judged and what they have to do to be successful. It just clears the air, and it helps make us better at our job in this very high pressure market we're all working in. Now, your recruiters also need to understand timing. Timing is critical in the recruiting process. They don't want to start too quick. They don't want to start too late, because again, a specific target date to fill provides them with timing on when they should begin. Now obviously, you don't want to start too quick. And if you're in the high volume, fast paced business, the timing is always immediately, and so you just, and sometimes you just have candidates report for work, if you've got that kind of relationship. However, in every other, aspect, timing has to be determined by you, and a target date really does help, your recruiting team know when and which search to work. Recruiters must research the company and the contact. Recruiters have to conduct research both on the company and contact to enhance their recruiting efforts. They should have Google alerts set up with anybody who may have worked at the company to obtain inside information, and they should set up Google alerts at the company. This will help them sell, why the company is a great place to work, which is more important than ever in this candidate-driven marketplace. Now, they can also go to Glassdoor, but you and I know Glassdoor is sort of a double-edged sword, because the only people that post on Glassdoor are either current employees or past employees. And unfortunately, current employees aren't as apt to go on Glassdoor and say something positive as past employees are to go on there and post something negative. In fact, this is something all of you should do for your company. You should go to your Glassdoor of your current company that you're working for and put some very positive reviews on why your contract staffing firm is such a great place to work. And somebody should also manage your Glassdoor, because that has to do a lot with your branding. You've got to always upgrade. You've got to post alerts. You've got to respond to any Glassdoor postings for your company as well, because potential clients and candidates are going to go to Glassdoor and see if you got any reviews. They're going to go to your LinkedIn profile, so your branding is out there. And again, we're talking, what people do. And, again, you just wrote a contract or an order. Don't think they don't check you out, because they do. Recruiters need to have questions clarified. A recruiter, again, must understand a job in order to recruit talent that's going to be hired without hesitation. So if you're an account executive, you've got to be willing to answer my questions. Don't lose patience with me. Don't say like the last one, and make sure that the recruiting team is informed and feel confident that they understand the specs and the talent needed. And if you can give your recruiters any insight into the company culture, into the core values, into the contractors that have been as successful at this client before. That helps recruiters do a better job. And so again, the more information I have as the recruiter, you can't just write a contract and give me a couple words or give me a job title. I need information if I'm going to feel confident to go out there and understand something. If I present an opportunity to a candidate and they ask me questions, I'm a recruiter, you wrote a job, I go out there and I'm recruiting on it, and the candidates ask me questions and I have to say, I don't know, I lose credibility. Because I've gone and said, I've got something I think would interest you. I couldn't wait to pick up the phone and talk to you. And then they ask me questions and I can't answer their questions. That's why it's important that you really take the time to answer any questions that your recruiters have. Now let's talk about how candidates are presented to clients. Recruiters should expect to schedule 100% of the candidates that they present. If someone is screened out, they should have the opportunity to sell their candidate back in by answering any areas of concern that the client may have. Now, I can tell you that I speak in front of your end users all the time. I just got back from RecruitCon, and RecruitCon was a conference that was all the leading construction, architectural, and engineering firms in the country, okay? So the top 50 companies in this country that are engineering consulting, architectural construction firms were at this conference in Seattle, Washington. And I did this conference, I think, a month ago. And it was so interesting because I said, when you're working with recruiters, because the reason I speak at these other conferences is to show them how to use us, to clarify expectations, because they've got us all clumped in the you people category and they don't see any difference. And I do tell them, by the way, that I wrote a course for LinkedIn Learning, how do you pick a recruiting firm? And they asked me at the conference, so how do we pick a recruiting firm? And one of the criteria I give them is that the firm you work with should belong to their professional association. Recruiters you work with should be certified. And the reason I say that is because I know that TechServe has that amazing certification program. So when I'm promoting, how do you pick a recruiter? How do you pick a recruiting firm? I do promote, make sure that they belong to your association. So the fact that you all belong to TechServe is what I'm telling them to look for. But I ask them, when we give candidates, when we present candidates to you, do you expect to book 100%? And they go, absolutely not. Recruiting firms expect us to screen out half of what they present. And I go, no, we don't. And they go, yes, you do. You send us 3 or 4, but we know you only expect us to basically, set up an interview for 1 or 2. And I go, what if I tell you that we expect to book 100%? And when you don't book somebody, what we'd like to do is put the recruiter on the phone so you can ask them questions. And they go, yeah, and if we ask them questions, they normally can't answer them. And I go, no, a good recruiting firm could. So this is something else you've got to change your mindset. If your recruiters took the time to recruit candidates, they should expect to book 100% of them. Now, obviously, that's not the case with VMS, or MSP, clients, but everyone else where you've got contact with the hiring authority, you should expect to book. And if they go to screen somebody out, if you've got 4 candidates you presented and they want to book 2, say, you know what, my recruiter was so positive and so strong about this one candidate. Would you mind if I conference them in, and could you ask them any questions on this candidate you screened out? Because I think you might be passing on a very strong candidate. And get your recruiter on the phone, and you know what? It makes them a better recruiter. Because if the client does ask them to, or does show them things that might be missing, the recruiter realizes that they missed the mark. And now they're not going to blame you for not presenting their candidate. They realize they missed the mark. So it makes recruiters better, and it helps you book more candidates. Our job every day is to get our candidates in front of clients. That's our job every day. Every day, count how many first interviews are booked. And if every month you just increase the first interviews, you'll be more successful, every single month. Your presentations when you're presenting candidates should not sound like you're reading their resume or CV. You got to focus on the accomplishments of the candidates and the impact of their accomplishments and how they align with the performance objectives of the client. They've done what the performance objectives are that you've identified. You have to realize that if they give you any objections, those are requests for more information. So provide information to sell your candidates back in, or you're going to fine tune your recruiting efforts when you realize what you missed. But this is so important. And again, you should backfill any candidates that are screened out. Now, if you're working, MSP, VMS, you can't do that. But other than that, you have to backfill anybody that's screened out. because you want to have 2 or 3 people in the final interview process. You don't want to start with 3, end up with 2 screened out and only 1 going into final interviews, because now your chances of filling it are dramatically reduced. You want to backfill unless you're working in a situation where you can't backfill. So you don't just send 3 people in and go to the next recruit. You want to keep recruiting until you've got an offer and an acceptance. And remember, again, it's all about accomplishments. And any objections you get, you should be able to overcome. There are 10 primary, candidate and client objections that you get. And it's amazing. I just got back from Florida last week, and I was doing in-house training for an IT consulting firm. And I was role-playing objections with them, both candidate and client. And it amazed me how they all were giving me the same objections. We don't use recruiting firms. We've got resources, or the candidates, I'm not looking. These are the things you get every day. The first time you get it, it's okay. But by the second or third time, you should be able to, confidently overcome every objection you get with the acceptance of silence. If they're not talking, you can't overcome that. But any other objection, you've got to start overcoming objections, or you're making customer service calls. If you're not overcoming 2 or 3 objections with every call, you're not making sales calls, you're making customer service calls. And that's not going to make you the type of income you deserve to earn. Now, why should you pre-close and use percentages? The reason you should do this is it's going to improve your results. Throughout your sales and recruiting efforts, clarify levels of interest by quantifying answers. Don't say, are you interested? You've got to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of interest for both the client and the candidate? And the other question you've got to ask to pre-close constantly is, has anything changed since the last time we talked? We are dealing with human beings, and things change. Things change for our clients. Things change. You've got to basically ask those 2 questions, because they'll alleviate any misunderstanding. And you can focus on the candidates who have a high level of interest, and that's extremely important to you. So you want to ask those 2 questions always, on a scale of 1 to 10. Don't ever ask anybody, are you interested? They'll say yes. And then you go on a scale of 1 to 10 and they go 4. And you're like, what? What would make it a 10? Well, nothing, because I have another job I'm looking at. And that's why that second question is so important. After you've initially talked to a client or candidate, every conversation has to start out with, has anything changed since the last time we talked? Think about how your life changes. That happens to our clients and candidates, and we get blindsided because we don't ask. And guess what? If we don't ask them if anything has changed, they're not going to tell us. And sometimes we don't like the answer, but I'd rather be informed than be blindsided, so I can get an additional candidates to fill that job. So that's the end of our program. I guarantee you, if you follow these suggestions, you will write business that will be filled. And again, your recruiters will appreciate the business you're bringing in. They'll appreciate that they understand it. You're both going to ask questions that are a little more precise. You're going to clarify answers, and you're going to make some changes in the way you work your desk. You're going to start getting performance objectives. You're going to start doing things a little bit differently, because the market has changed, and we can't keep doing things the same way in this candidate-driven market. It's just not working. So we have to go out there and do things a little differently. And I've given you 5 or 6 things in this session that are a little bit different, but I'm telling you it'll make you more money. So what I want you to do is go through this handout after this call. It's not enough to just show up. Showing up is number one. The fact that all of you are here, there's a holiday weekend, I commend all of you, okay? But it's implementing their ideas. There's no power in what I do. Training is not powerful unless you take an idea and you implement it. And I would love for you each to pick one thing you're going to change as a result of this call and share it with your manager or your owner, and let them know that you come into these calls, that they're getting a return on their investment for their TSA membership and their calls. If I have any owners and managers on the call, I also want to remind you that the TechServe Alliance Conference is right around the corner. It's in California. TechServe has got one of the best programs and the best conferences I've ever seen. TechServe has always been my favorite conference to attend because of what they do for members. And so if you're on the fence, make your reservations. You won't be sorry, because the program is just outstanding. And so if I had any owners and managers on the phone, I know it's an investment, but you'll get a return on that investment because the conference is great. I also want to encourage any of you, I do tell people that when they're looking for recruiting firms to look for members of their professional associations, but I also do promote certification. And if any of you, this is a sampling of the type of training that we give in the certification program. And this is a very small sampling of what's in that program. So if you're on the fence and thinking, should I be certified or not? The answer is yes. We only use an MD when we're going to a doctor. We would not go to a dentist that didn't have a DDS. Your candidates have a lot of credentials behind their name and certifications. So do your clients. And they appreciate certification in the IT and engineering niche more than any other niche because they're so certified. And so the candidates appreciate the fact that you've taken the time. If you signed up today, you could be certified before the end of, say, like if you started today and you studied by October, you could be certified. So it's not a huge time commitment, and it will fine-tune your skills and give you a credential that basically differentiates you as well. So I do encourage any of you that are listening to please, consider the certification program. If you've got questions, just reach back out to Caitlin or anyone at TechServe, and they'll be glad to provide you with information. So now I want to open the lines for questions. I think that is the most important part of this call. The questions don't have to be about today's program. You can ask me questions one of two ways. Look at the control panel on the right. If when you called in, you gave a phone number, a PIN number, and the access code, you can hit that round circle with a question mark, and I can unmute your lines, and you and I can talk. Or you could go down below on that control panel to see the word questions, and if you click on that, it opens a dialog box, and you can type in your questions. Now, I always use your first name just to personalize my responses. If, in fact, you don't want me to say your first name, just put the word confidential or anonymous, and I will not say your name. So let me see if anybody raised their hand. And by the way, when you raise your hand is when you'll get the most information from me. This is like free consulting. And the reason I say that is because, usually one question leads to another. So if any of you have any, if you want to raise your hand, you and I can role play, we can do whatever you want. Okay, I do see a question below. I see no hands. This is from Kristen. What do you say to an account executive who insists on talking to candidates prior to submitting them to the client? I think that's a good account exec, Kristen, I'll be honest with you, because I think that a lot of account execs, I don't want them to rescreen, but if they've got any questions, or they might be able to sell it or get the candidate more excited about it, I don't think that's a bad practice. I know a lot of account executives that just want to touch the candidate, but usually it's not prior to submitting them. You said prior to submitting them to a client. I find out that they usually want to touch them when we're actually, like when we're prepping the candidate. That's when most account executives touch the candidate. As far as prior to submitting them, then that shows me that they're not sure if you're submitting quality candidates. And I would not know why they would want to do that, because there has to be a certain trust level. If you're a brand new recruiter, or if they've got questions about the candidate, I could see maybe that a case. But to do that as a standard operating procedure, that's wasting a lot of time. Your account executives should trust what you do. We have a candidate presentation form, Kristen, that my recruiters give to the account execs, and it answers any question they're going to have about the candidate. And what I would suggest is, why don't you try doing that? Why don't you try filling out a candidate presentation form? If you want a copy of that form, I'll be glad to share it with you. Just send an email to support@staffingandrecruiting.com. That's our support line here. Just put support@staffingandrecruiting.com and put presentation form in the subject line, and I'll make sure that we get that to you, because again, that answers all the questions that they would have. It gives all the candidates, accomplishments and the impact. It gives their availability for interview. It gives the reason why they left their job. That along, with information should be more than enough. And I would have to think, then I have to put it back on you, Kristen. Are you really conducting a thorough interview? Are you using a questionnaire when you're interviewing? Are you sharing that information with the account exec? Maybe they feel they don't have enough information. So you've got to, so this is on both of you. You really got to do thorough interviews and pre-qualify your candidates. And by the way, if your account executives are using percentages when they're writing contracts and you're using percentages when you interview, matching gets much easier. But I think the presentation form will help you, and I'd be glad to share that. Again, just send a request to support@staffingandrecruiting.com. That comes to my team, and they'll send you a copy of that form. And if anybody else wants a copy of that, just do the same thing, and I'll be glad to share that with you, because that basically gives the account exec everything they need to know. Now, my account execs often, after we prep candidates, you just want to touch them before they go on the interview to answer any questions about the client or that type of thing, but they're not touching when we present. They trust my recruiting team. So again, different companies do it different ways, but I might ask why that's being done, because that's a lot of work on the account executive as well. And again, if you're a brand new person and they might want to just double check, I could see that, but that would be the only reasoning I could see. All right, I see no more questions, and this is so unusual for us not to have any questions. Let me see if there's anything below. I see no hands being raised. No one wants to talk to me today. I'm not going to take that personal. By the way, any of you that are at conference, please approach me, ask me any questions. I'm there the whole time, and I don't mind being, interrupted. I don't care what I'm doing. Please pull me aside. I'm glad to talk to you. I have a question from Mark. Our client account managers are not likely to provide performance criteria beyond the job description. A couple of brief words. What suggestions do you have for account executives to get client account managers to provide these performance criteria? You have to show the clients how it benefits them, okay? And the reason, nobody's going to do it if they think it's more work. What you want to do is when you go out there and you're asking for performance objectives, you've got to show the client why it benefits them. So what you have to say is, we've been out there and we've tried something new with a couple clients and it's been working great, and I want to save you time as well. And so in addition to getting the criteria of the job, if you could tell me how our candidates are going to be judged, what performance objectives do you have? If you could give me 3 to 5 performance objectives, how are you going to grade our candidates? We can get a better caliber candidate in front of you. And we're starting to be asked that question. Millennials and Gen X and Gen Z, they want to know how they're going to be judged. And so this is also playing into the new generations. But for the client side, you've got to show them how it benefits them. It's going to save them time because you're going to fine tune your recruiting efforts on their behalf. Anytime you want anybody to do something you're not doing with, even when you're asking for, interviewing times. Well, when you have the candidate, we'll interview. Well, candidates are being wooed by 2 or 3 different, clients. When I've got a good person on the phone, I want to pin them down for an interview so that I don't lose them, because it's so competitive out there. You've always got to show me how it benefits me to do what you want me to do. As long as I know it's going to benefit me. And always remember, guys, the candidates and clients, they don't care about us. Even our good clients. If we were on a bridge and it was between them and us, they'd push us in a heartbeat. They care about themselves. And so every time you want them to do something, remember that "what's in it for me" tattoo on their forehead, and always address that. I want to propose something that I think is going to benefit you greatly. And we tried this out, it's working. And so now that I know it works, I want to propose it to you. If you can give me some performance objectives, it really is helping us get better talent, and it's going to save us a lot of time. It really helps us in our screening process. Just when you ask them for percentages, they're not going to want to give it. You have to show them why it benefits them to give you percentages. You can make better matches. That's a great reason. All right, let me see if I have any other questions. Let's see, I don't see any hands being raised. And I don't see any additional questions. Okay, I guess I'm going to turn the phone call over to you, Caitlin.
Real quick, Barb, there was a response that just came in as you said that.
Okay, can you repeat your email? Okay, the email is support@staffingandrecruiting.com. And I've got another question. Do you have any suggestions on how to persuade the client that it's best for them to use performance criteria? If you tell them that you've done it, that you've been out there beta testing it on a few clients and you wanted to make sure it was working before you propose it to them, but if you give me performance criteria, then it helps me fine tune my search on your behalf. It's no different. If I know how somebody's going to be judged, then it gives me a much better idea of the credentials that have to be there. And of course, you're still going to get other things from them, but the performance objectives help me fine tune what I'm doing on your behalf. And so that's why it's so important for us to get those, because it just helps us do a better job for you. And the contractors that we're placing, they know what is expected of them. We share the performance objectives with them. This is how you're going to be judged. And it's helping us screen out people, because sometimes they have the credentials. But then when we share, the criteria, how you're going to judge them in 6 months or a year, they realize it's not what they want to do, or it's not what they want to be judged on. And so it's really helping us screen out, anybody that would not work out, and screen in those candidates that are going to really excel in your contract. So I don't see anything else, Caitlin. Do you? I think that's the last one. Okay.
Yeah.
Caitlin.
I'll go over a couple things, and we, you can still submit questions if you'd like while I'm going over stuff. Go on ahead, but really quickly, thank you so much again, everyone, for attending. We will be posting this recording on the TechServe Alliance website, and we'll be also sending that out in follow-up emails to all registrants. So just as FYI, if for whatever reason you're not able to make a live webinar and you're perhaps on the fence while you're registering, you're like, I don't know if that time is going to work for me, please register anyway, because you'll get the recording sent directly to your inbox so you can watch it at your leisure. And that's the best way to, make sure that you're getting the information that Barb is presenting. Our next webinar will be next week on the 5th of September. Oh my gosh, it's September. That'll be from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern on it's a business development webinar titled Build a Winning Sales and Recruiting Team. So you can register for that on our website as well. Final thing, of course, Barb, if you want to actually advance the slide one, I think there's a slide on the certification program.
There wasn't. It was just a blank slide. I looked at the next slide and it was just blank. Yeah, see, it's blank. I don't know why that's not there.
Okay. No worries then. So techservalliance.org/certification is kind of your one-stop shop for everything related to our certification program. And I would also be more than happy to talk to anyone, especially say if you're an account executive and recruiter and maybe need a little bit of a script or some information to present to your boss in order to, get them to sign on for the training. I'd be happy to do that. So you can contact us at staff@techservalliance.org for that as well.
I also want to make one point here that I know that there have been many recruiters and account executives that are basically paying for their own certification. And so if your employer is not backing the program, that doesn't mean that you can't apply yourself. So this program is not only open to your owners to get their buy-in, because again, owner expenses have gone up probably, they're 5 times more now than they were 10 years ago. So your owners are being slammed with a lot of expenses that they never had to worry about, and it's getting worse and worse. I'm an owner. I mean, I can vouch for the fact that our expenses keep escalating. But if you truly want to be certified, this is one of the best investments you can make in yourself. And Caitlin can walk you through how to sign up. She can walk you through exactly what it takes. It gives you a tremendous amount of knowledge. And wouldn't it be great that that becomes one of your goals, that before the end of this year, you want to be certified? And I mean, it is a differentiator. So there's nothing stopping you from registering yourself. And if you want to get the information, please reach out, because again, yes, owners are providing you with, training and these webinars, and they belong to TechServe. But if you really are passionate about this career and you want to set yourself apart, the certification is one way to do that. And you can't do that on your own. It could be your gift to you. So, please consider that. I just wanted to throw that out there because I know I've gotten calls from people. They have registered. They were thrilled. And their owner was so impressed that they did it on their own. A couple owners even reimbursed them. So, just consider this as something that you might think about doing yourself.
Absolutely, Barb. Thank you so much. We don't have any more questions that have been submitted, so please make sure to fill out a little survey pops up when we end the webinar call. It's just feedback. We would really appreciate, your suggestions on what you want to hear about, what kind of topics that you would like us to cover, because that's what those suggestions are, what we build our content off of. So would love to get that. And if you have any further questions for Barb, you could also send those to Barb's email that she listed before, or staff@techservalliance.org, and we'd be happy to help. I think that's about it, Barb. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful Labor Day weekend.
Yes, happy Labor Day. And by the way, guys, this is a great time to reach out to clients and candidates. Reach out to your clients, thanking them for hiring people, and it's because of them that we celebrate Labor Day. Reach out to all your contractors and placements and thank them for being part of the labor force. I don't even send holiday cards. I send Labor Day and really celebrate this with my clients and candidates. And if you haven't done that, you got today and tomorrow, it's a great way to just call them and say, happy Labor Day. Thank you for being part of the workforce or for providing jobs. It's just another fun thing to do during the next day and a half, okay?
Sounds great, Barb. I would love it. Someone send me a gift. All right. Well, with that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.